Hello, everyone. Today I'm joined by Alli Haapasalo, the director of Girls, 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 and we're going to have a nice chat today, I hope, about the film and about her and about things in general, and anything goes. So, Alli, welcome.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
All right. Well, I was thinking maybe we could start by introducing the film, and maybe you can tell me a little bit about what is it and what goes on. Up to you.
Sure. Well, like the title suggests, it's very much a film about girls. In fact, it is about three girls on 3 Fridays, hence the girls, girls, girls. And I would start by saying that actually girls, girls, girls in Finnish is this phrase that we use to shame girls. We go, girls, girls, girls. Kind of like, what have you done now? You know, girls have done something wrong. Girls have worn something wrong. Girls have said something wrong. And when we decided on this title, it wasn't the working title of the film, but after the film was finished, we decided on this title because I want to take it back, that phrase. I want to give it a completely new tone, kind of like a jubilant, girls, girls, girls. So I guess that would be my sort of short intro to what the film is all about.
Awesome. All right. Well, I like that response, actually. That's great. So in that case, tell me a little bit about maybe sort of how the idea came about. So I know you directed the film, but I don't know how much involvement you had in the writing process. Maybe you can talk to me a bit about that kind of how it came about, so to speak.
Sure. The writers are Ilona Ahti and Daniela Hakulinen, brilliant writers. They contacted me back in 2014 when they had a treatment for the film. So basically they had the basic storyline and the ideas of the characters, but they didn't have a draft yet. And they wanted to proceed together with a director. And it was really easy to jump on board already from the treatment phase, or at that time, because you could tell from the treatment that there was this promise of a really fresh look on adolescence. And the reason I got excited was the three girls. You know, I was looking for a story at the time that would be, or stories in general, that would be very sort of female-led and female-focused stories. And also I was looking for something that was story-wise or plot-wise simple enough and small enough that would allow me to do a character study and really concentrate on themes and characters rather than be very plotty or scripted or very constructed, because I was struggling with my first feature at the time. I was writing it myself, and that story was way too big to fit in a feature film. And that was a really big years-long struggle, actually. So this script had kind of both of these stories and a very fresh take. So we started developing the script together. Daniela and Ilona are definitely the writers, but I had the privilege of being involved in a lot of talking, a lot of commenting, a lot of sort of beautiful long conversations about what we think of things, whether it be adolescence or a representation of girls or our experiences growing up, what kind of characters we had identified with or not identified with, because that was actually one of the big feelings that we shared, that we didn't feel like we had so many characters to identify with growing up on the big screen. So throughout the years, that's how we did it. Like, they wrote the drafts, and then we always had a lot of conversations in between, and we kept going.
Wow. I mean, you know, I've seen the film twice now. I love it. Seriously, I really think it's an amazing film. And, you know, we were picking films to kind of screen around Wales, and I was like, I've just seen this film called Girls, Girls, Girls through the ICO screening days, which is kind of this online screening platform thing that young people and industry goers can kind of watch these films and stuff. And I watched this finished film. I'll be honest, I didn't read anything about the description. I just saw a still image of it, and I thought, wow, that's pretty. It's beautiful colors, exactly what I want, so much vibrance, and there was so much life in this one image. And I was like, I'm going to watch that. And I have to say, like, it's such a good film. And, you know, you say it's sort of a representation of young women, but honestly, it's such a young representation of all young people, I think. Certainly for me, I thought that was probably only film I've seen that's represented me, you know, and I'm a man. So, you know, I think that says a lot as well. I think I thought it was just, I thought I could speak to it, you know, I can back it up, and I can tell that you really sort of focused on it and the story, and it really shows. So seriously, amazing.
Thank you. And thank you for pointing that out about identification, because there's kind of this cliched thought that, you know, women claim that we identify with all genders of characters because, you know, we're so used to identifying with male stories because we don't have so many female stories on screen if you compare, like if you did a study on statistics. But then there's also this belief that, like, especially in the financing side often apparently, that men or boys wouldn't identify with the female experience. And I find it funny that we have these two completely opposing claims. So I think that it's really lovely to hear from you that you felt like it represented young people in general, and that you felt that strong identification. That just goes to prove that it really shouldn't be gender-based who we identify with.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say though, I think the one moment that truly sort of I could identify with mostly was after one of the characters, she eventually gets with that man, that young man from the smoothie stand. She goes back out with him. She stays over, and in the morning when she's feeling a little bit, you know, oh, last night didn't go too well, and he goes, oh, I don't have coffee, but I do have Coke, and that's, you know, that's exactly what I drink in the morning. And that, you really nailed it there, I think. I've never met a single man my age that likes coffee. We all just really unhealthy, have no teeth. That's kind of all we do. So you nailed it, honestly, even those little details.
Very nice.
But yeah, okay. So I was watching a few of your interviews, and I saw once you mentioned apparently this all sort of you were casting this during when COVID hit, I think. So I'm just wondering, how did you go about casting this picture? How did it, you know, what were the conditions? I guess they weren't in person. You know, how did that come about?
Well, the first round of casting wasn't in person. It was the first time that I ever did self-tapes or asked for self-tapes. And that was really interesting. I got 155 self-tapes, I believe. They were for any of the girl roles. I had this sort of generic scene. So people weren't applying specifically for one of the three girls. And I watched them all meticulously. I sort of felt like it's my duty. If people have gone through the trouble of making a self-tape, which is probably a harrowing process, I owe it to them to not just watch the first half, but to the end. And it was really interesting, you know, to see what you're looking for, because of course you're looking for talent, of course you're looking for on-screen charisma, and of course you're looking at the person's habitus and sort of trying to put them in that role. But I also very quickly realized that I could not cast a character at a time. I just had to all the time be casting a band, a triangle, because the second you change one of the three girls, everything changes, not just that one girl. And so the dynamic was quite tricky to find, not because I would not have enough good options. I had plenty of really beautiful, talented, very charismatic, and sort of dramaturgically intelligent applicants. But it was just like a very interesting and long and time-consuming process to find exactly the right personalities for the roles. And also it was interesting because I realized that there was kind of a small window of age that the actors could be. You know, if they were too young and clearly didn't have experiences of the themes that we were talking about in the text, that could, you know, you can tell, you know, that person doesn't know what they're supposed to be feeling or saying in that scene. And also when they were quote unquote too experienced, you know, too mature, or like had already like completed a acting degree and were maybe a little bit too young for the roles, then they kind of lacked this similar innocence that you then would have had a few years earlier, that you weren't like fully on top of all of these themes and things. So it was a very interesting sort of small window that I was looking for. But of course, from those self-tapes, I couldn't yet decide anything. So we then went on to proper auditions with a casting agent and callbacks. And, it took 3 months for me to make the decision. And I was taking it very slowly, deliberately, because I knew that this type of film, which is very, very character driven and very much on the face of the actors, would live or die with the cast. And at the final round of callbacks, everybody read the script. So we could also talk a lot about the story. That was really important to me. I don't want just actors who come in and sort of like do their part perfectly and go home. I wanted everybody to take ownership of the story and the themes and the politics and the statements and, the full experience, the dramaturgy of this story and the world that the film represents. So then it was very easy in the end because I had found the perfect trio.
I mean, it shows as well. And what else shows as well is just listening to you talk now about your mindset about sort of directing, and maybe we'll get into a little bit of that later. But, I think that really it resonates, I think, in the film. I've spoken to many directors, and some like a lot of control, and others like you, I think. It's safe to say that you're a little bit more open to sort of letting people maybe do things. And did you let the actors maybe have a bit of creative control and a little bit of a say in how sort of their characters were portrayed?
Absolutely. I think that's the best way to create top quality. Like if a director comes in and asks people to do what they thought, you only have your own talent and your own mind to work with. And if I ask everybody else to contribute their talent and their mind, of course, I have a lot more genius in the room. With the actors, the first thing I said to them, please don't be shy about notes. If there's anything at all that you have an idea of, or you want to raise a conversation about, or you want to bring up in conversation, please, immediately. I would hate it if you keep it to yourselves when you have an idea, and then you're too afraid or too sort of like respectful to bring it up. It doesn't mean that the actors have to recreate their dialogue. Like, I get asked, for example, like, oh, did they make it fresher because they're young and, they can sort of have trendy expressions or anything. It's not like that. The language is very much the language of the writers. Of course, there are words and details here and there that we changed. But it's more like just really knowing your character. Actors have a really amazing sort of visceral experience of the character that's very different from the writer's perspective or the director's perspective. And certain questions that writers or directors can sort of pass as, well, the answer is something like this. Doesn't work for the actor. Actor can't work with something like this. They have to know. Either if they don't get the answer from the director to the question, they have to resolve it for themselves. And so, I love collaborating with actors because of this reason, because for them, it's very unique, personal experience, how they're portraying the character and building the character. And so that to me is just one of the best parts of the process. For example, the relationship with Mimmi and her mom was a little bit perhaps like unspecific or a little bit unclear on page still. And we had a rehearsal with the two actors who played Oona Airola, who plays the mom, is like a big star actor in Finland. I was very happy that she took just a 2-day role to do such a small part. And I was just basically talking about mothers, daughters, and relationships, familial relationships with her and Aamu Milonov, who plays Mimmi. And I was writing, like my pen was like smoking because of all of the ideas that they were coming up with. And I rewrote that relationship basically based on their beautiful comments. It's not like the core of the relationship changed. It's not like I changed the screenwriter's idea, but it became more specific and very sort of like lived in a way, thanks to the actors. This is kind of like just an example of my process. It's very inclusive and very collaborative.
Great. All right. Well, you've talked about before filming in a way. How about sort of when you're filming you personally? So I'm interested to know what your mindset might be. Maybe what do you do before going on set even? Do you know what I mean? How do you sort of, do you compose yourself in a way? Or I don't know, do you have some kind of stress relief mechanism? Tell all.
Oh, on this film, oh my goodness. We were in such a hurry all the time. We shot this in 25 days, which I think was maybe 3 days too little. Which means that, you know, you're kind of in a hurry all the time. My ideal is to be calm so that I can focus my energy on seeing and listening, because that's the way to stay focused on what you're actually getting. But I feel like on this set, I was just like this jokester. I was this sort of like, I don't know, I feel like we were in such a hurry that I was living off like adrenaline and like joking and sort of like keeping the energy really high and sort of, I don't know, I hope it didn't make me unfocused, but it was a very different energy that I ideally would have wanted. Maybe it also has to do with sort of you're always trying to create a really good atmosphere on set. And now because we had a lot of young people on set and a lot of people without so much experience of sets, maybe I was just sort of like trying to break the ice all the time also, you know, be very approachable and that kind of thing. But in terms of the work, basically seeing and hearing is kind of everything. You really want to be in communication with your main crew. My DP, Jarmo Kiuru, and I have worked on 3 projects together, and it's such a pleasurable conversation that we always have. He's actually the guy who does stay calm. And then with your actors, I think I'm always trying to be very close to my DP and my actors and try to sort of focus on listening to everything they have to say and seeing everything they are offering. A lot of times when actors ask, can I do this or can I do that? Or do you want it more like this way? I just say, show me. And then, you know, if you're asking people to show you, then you really have to see what they're showing and then give sane comments about that. So seeing and hearing, that would be the method.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I mean, you kind of you've given me questions to ask you now. I want to reach out a little bit more. You talk about running a set, you know, efficiently and in a great environment. And I love that, you know, you're joking and stuff on set. I've been on many sets where directors are really serious, and that feels down to the crew, you know. Whereas you work with some directors that are, you know, super funny and kind, like you clearly. And you know, the crew are so much happier, and everybody's far more willing to come into work. So I'm just wondering about maybe what you think about sort of the film landscape at the minute and how maybe it might be shifting a little bit. So I remember a few months ago in the States, crew members were threatening to walk out and stuff over, you know, 16-hour days and poor working conditions, things like that. And like I said, you know, I've been on many a set as well, as I'm sure clearly you have too. And I've been on great ones, and I've been on ones that are really tough as well, you know. And do you think maybe the landscape's changing? Do you think for maybe the young people that will be watching this, do you think there's kind of hope for us to have sort of maybe a better work environment than generations before us?
Yeah, that's a tricky question because there's also a lot of talk right now in Finland about productions having so much focus on efficiency that sometimes, you know, having sort of more, not relaxed, I don't need anybody to be like relaxed on set per se, but sort of like an easier, like a more allowing environment of sets is threatened, you know, because you're in such a hurry all the time and you're constantly working on a smaller budget than you'd like to be. And that, of course, creates a lot of pressure. And, you know, films are kind of, in a way, easier thing because it's this like weird animal that you create together with the crew, you know, like it's clunky in the beginning and then on day 25 you're in like hopefully perfect sync together and it's going really well. But then think of 100 days of a TV show, you know, some ambitious drama series, for example. That's a long time to be stressed out or be working under-resourced or under a lot of pressure because of the schedule. So I certainly hope that there's a lot more talk about it and conversation, and people certainly expect to be treated well and have good resources for their work, have enough time to do what they're being asked to do. You know, you can't create beautiful work unless you're given the proper amount of time to do it, and proper facilities to do it also. But there is definitely this worry of small budgets and what's that causing. Luckily, we're talking about it, and yeah, as long as we're aware of it and asking for it and refusing to do, you know, under-resourced productions, let alone dangerous ones, which there has also been a lot of discussion about, you know, then we can get it to be what it should be.
Yeah, wow, that's some nice positive talk from you there, some real talk, I think. Okay, I would like to then maybe just go back to the film a little bit, and I'd like to know where did you film it? Because I know it's a Finnish film, and it's filmed in Finland. And also, I haven't congratulated you, by the way, on, I think, were you the first ever Finnish film in Sundance to be selected or something, or win an award? Or
yes, we were the first feature in competition ever, and also obviously therefore the first feature to be awarded, because we were lucky enough to get the audience award.
Wow, well, I mean, congratulations, honestly, that's amazing. I think, I actually don't know, I don't think we've had any, I know there's been no Welsh language film or film from Wales that's made it to the Cannes Film Festival, for example. And that's something that, you know, us young people, young filmmakers in Wales are really invested about, sort of getting there and accomplishing something like you've done. So yeah, wow, that gives us a lot of inspiration, I think. So well done, honestly, that's amazing.
Good. And if people are telling you that it's you know, an issue of language as well, because we kind of think that difficult languages like Welsh or Finnish can't be watched by foreign language speakers, you know, that the English language audience is having a lot of issue with that and subtitles, you know, just don't believe it. I mean, this film is done in Finnish. So, you know, it's probably as difficult as Welsh, I would assume, that in the international scale for people to listen to, I mean. So, you know, just go for it. Don't let people tell you it's that your language is too difficult for a global audience.
I think it's less about our languages are difficult and more that they're just so amazing that people just can't quite grasp how just great they are. But yeah, tell me about, you filmed it in Finland. Where exactly in Finland did you film it? Did you move around much?
We didn't go around much. You want to be very close to the rental house because you don't want to be actually spending any of your filming time in transition. But yeah, we basically shot in Helsinki or surrounding areas, the metropolitan Helsinki. And what we wanted to do also was Helsinki is a town with a beautiful Art Deco center, which is often featured in the films about Helsinki. And we wanted to stay out of there because we wanted this to be a more modern and contemporary Helsinki. And we also wanted to feature a city that was in a process of evolving, because that's what the adolescent youth in the film is, of course. They are in what I call a liminal space, you know, between adolescence and adulthood. So we wanted the city to be in a liminal space as well. So you'll see, like when Emma is dancing on the parking lot, you'll see a lot of cranes and sort of like bigger buildings, bigger new apartment buildings being built in the background. And so we stayed a lot in that area where that scene is shot. It's close to the city center here, called the Fish Harbor, a new neighborhood, because every time you go there, it looks different. And it's very much now. So it's kind of a snippet of time as well.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about sort of, you know, the city and sort of bring it into the film. I really like how it makes a good background to the film, but it doesn't distract from the film. You know, I don't think it's, there's not much emphasis on, I think, the location. It's just more how it's impacted the characters. And I think that's fed through. And like I said, it's like a nice backdrop and a beautiful one as well. Like you mentioned when she's dancing in the parking lot, I thought that was probably one of the most beautiful moments in all that film. I thought the colors are just amazing. And maybe you can talk to me a little bit about I don't know, how you've come about actually making that film, and maybe what kind of kit did you use? Did you use a lot of emphasis on lighting, for example? Did you do anything perhaps differently to, for example, other directors that you admire maybe would have done something differently? And yeah, is there anything unique maybe that you think you might have brought to the table?
Sure. I'll try to restrict myself because I could talk 2 hours about all of that.
Please do.
In addition to wanting to really collaborate with the actors, I love and adore the artistic collaboration with my team. My cinematographer, costume designer, production designer, makeup designer, and then of course in post-production, music supervisor and sound designer and editor. And we had such a beautiful, long process of prep for this film. What I do is I ask my artistic crew if they're willing to dedicate time before the shoot on a sort of like a pretty evolved artistic process. I don't just want to sort of come in, tell my vision, and then everybody goes to like sort of fulfill their respective fields. But instead, we start with dramaturgy. We break down the script very carefully. We go through the dramaturgical purpose of every scene, choose a main image for every scene, talk about all the characters, what the world means to us and represents to us. And with this film, we decided to try and really build the aesthetic on the teenage experience. What does it feel like to be an adolescent person? And what does that mean aesthetically? How does that affect cinematography? How is that reflected in production design? I spoke of that a little bit. And how are the characters built through costume and makeup? And I like to work through keywords. So we selected sort of specific words or phrases or mottos, so to speak, that we were building on. And, they all were trying to sort of capture what the teenage experience is. For example, movement was a big one, because I feel like adolescence is all about movement and abrupt tempo changes in that movement. So I had kind of this motto that I kept repeating to people, that movement is a norm in this world. And then moments of silence or stillness are a special effect. And that was something that we were using a lot in cinematography. And basically, I wanted to be really, really realistic with everything. So I also kept repeating that it can't look like a movie. Like the second it looks like a film or feels like a film, we've done something wrong. We can't aestheticize youth in that sense, because then it becomes like a construction of it, and it has to feel real. Like this movie won't feel like anything if it doesn't feel real. And I really didn't want it to have an nostalgic point of view, or like an older person's point of view. I really wanted to feel relevant from the character's point of view. I wanted the film to be looking at the girls from at eye level, and sort of be very relevant from their point of view. And this meant a lot of things for camera work. Jarmo and I like to work very methodically. We like to really build a method for the project that we're working on. And with this one, we started to pull from a documentary technique. So we were trying to make the camera sort of as invisible as possible, a very respectful observer, so that the camera would always be there for the actors rather than the actors for the camera. They don't have to hit marks or like always repeat things the same way. And I said to the actors that they can speak over each other, and they don't have to worry so much about continuity and that kind of thing, because I think that went with the realism very well. And for the lighting, actually, which you mentioned, I must say that I really adore the lighting plan of Jarmo and his gaffer Matlena, because he made this really beautiful plan to start. It's 3 Fridays and a Saturday, so there's obviously a repetition of form there. And I think with the lighting plan, Jarmo took the idea of repetition to use in a really beautiful way. Every afternoon, every Friday starts with this like winter hues that are very specific here in Finland: magentas, grays, blues. It's kind of a cold and gray afternoon. And when it goes toward the evening, which to these girls are, every evening is always full of possibility. It's an opportunity to change your life in a way. So it goes into these like deeper, more velvety tones of like the red in the scene that you're referring to when she's dancing, and sort of like very emotional, thick colors. And then ends with even electricity or neon of the laser tag and clubbing and the city lights and that kind of thing. And Jarmo so beautifully repeats that, and it really gives the film its atmosphere. I believe lighting is the #1 atmosphere builder in any film. And I think that they just did a really gorgeous job with that.
They did. It was amazing. And I love the production design as well. I do want to mention that where the characters live and their rooms, for example, and sort of, where they are at their free time, I thought that was actually a pretty good representation. It's sort of kind of messy in a tidy way, and I think that's a lot of young people, I think. I think we're quite tidy, but, we like our mess and stuff. And I liked, loads of potted plants as well. Very in right now. Nailed it.
And Christmas lights in rooms,
yes,
all around.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Well, like you say, it sets an atmosphere, and hey, maybe young people get that. I don't know.
I just have to say kudos to the production designer Laura Haapakangas, because that's the kind of detail that she was so specific and good on. Like in the script, Mimi's apartment is full of pizza boxes and a dump. And we're like, wait, isn't that a little bit like, adults looking at young people's homes and thinking, oh, they're a dump, like, is pizza boxes or not cleaning up really like saying so much about the person? Like, let's think a little bit further. Let's think more specifically. Who is she? Where she's coming from? There's a lot of art that she's created in that room. I think it's really like girly at the same time as it's like really cool. There's like an element of feminism in the details. You can actually see a postcard with the word girls, girls, girls on the wall. That's where the name came from. It's thanks to our graphic designer who had created that postcard. And so, Laura was just like creating the spaces so specifically and beautifully from the character's world, rather than this outside look of what do we think girls are, and that's why it's working, and it looks so effortless. It looks kind of like we just went into these spaces to do to shoot basically, but it's all Laura Haapakangas and her very good team doing the production design.
And an outstanding job as well. It really shows, honestly, it really resonates. It's a beautiful film. I love it. And what do you say about the title? And it came from a little graphic postcard. Wow, that's a bit of magic right there. That's some true sort of original old-fashioned filmmaking. That is, taking inspiration from when you're there on set as well, and then carrying that over.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I had told that whoever comes with the best title for the film that I end up choosing will get a bottle of good champagne from me. And then that day because I'm terrible at titles, like just look at my resume, you can tell I'm terrible with titles. And so that day, Aamu Milonov, who plays Mimmi, is, in the middle of rehearsal or between takes or something. And she's just looking at like the production design and the props around. And she's like, oh, Tytöt, which is the Finnish title of Girls, Girls, Girls. It's the postcard is in English, but then she suggested the Finnish one, and then we were immediately in love with it.
Yeah,
so champagne.
Oh well, good. Amazing, honestly. All right then, I'd like to sort of rewind, if you don't mind, sort of to the beginning of Alli Haapasalo, if I may. Not necessarily from when you were a baby, unless you would like to start there, you're more than welcome to. But sort of how you came about deciding you wanted to be a director. I work with Film Ifanc, a young youth filmmakers group here in Wales. And we're always looking for inspiration. And, you know, we're in that moment, like the three girls, you know, we're kind of in between being kids and being adults, you know. I'm 22 and I'm still very much in that phase where I can be very mature and, you know, I drink Coke in the morning, so very immature as well. But yeah, so maybe tell me a little bit about, you know, how it all began for you and kind of what you're setting out to do.
Sure. I don't have that perfect narrative story of my dad taking me to see City Lights by Chaplin, and then like I never wanted to do anything more than film. And I actually, you know, I've been joking that I should come up with one, but thinking of who might be listening to this, I think it's in a way better that I don't, because there are so many people who feel like it has to be some sort of big epiphany or something that you are born to be a filmmaker. And I don't believe that. I grew up with film. I was a creative child. I was always directing. I was directing, you know, very much quote unquote plays with my cousins and my friends. And I was, you know, had a huge imagination. So I think that it comes naturally from there that I want to be telling stories or dealing with my take on the world through stories and through filmmaking. And I had creative hobbies, and, you know, I did photography since a young age and that kind of thing. But there was nothing like a, you know, path of a filmmaker sort of laid out there for me. You know, in high school, when I kind of had this urge to make documentary films because I was a big sort of world saver girl, like I wanted to change the world for the better, and I still do. You know, I started to think that I wanted to make documentary film of important topics and sort of use my time trying to change people's minds to do something for the better. But becoming a filmmaker seemed just as relevant as becoming an astronaut, you know, like it wasn't like something that I thought was possible at all. I applied to journalism school first, and then I was actually doing an exchange from journalism, the university in Stockholm in Sweden, where some people I was talking to said that they wanted to become filmmakers. And I remember that moment really well, because I remember thinking like, wow, here's a person my age saying that they want to become a filmmaker. Like, they think it's a totally legit dream. They're like, I think I was 19 or 20. And they are like, oh, it's going to happen. Like, wow, how interesting. Like, there's actually people who think that you can just do that. And I think that gave me the first thought of realism, that it doesn't just have to be like a dream. It can actually be a reality. And I applied to film school when I returned from Sweden to Finland. And I was very lucky and happy to get in the Finnish film school the first time I applied. And yeah, so then I've been studying. It's not like, you know, it's a long process. And I think that in the beginning, you think kind of the biggest thoughts, and then the more you study and the more you make films, the more humble you get. You know, it's a big medium. It's a really difficult but very rewarding medium, and it's a medium that you definitely can master by just studying and working, just, you know, exercising, just making as many things as you can that are meaningful to you. I don't believe in making things that you don't care about. I can only make films that I care about. And then you can become good when you've had opportunity to practice.
Wow, that was definitely really inspiring, honestly. I mean, you know, for me as kind of, you know, I'm a young person, I'm trying to navigate things at the minute, and I'm a musician and I'm a filmmaker as well. And people ask me, oh, what do you do? And I say those two things, and is always a look in their eyes of, well, which one is it? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, well, you know, they go hand in hand at times. Do you know what I mean? I make music for my films. I save money. But that's what I mean. Like, you know, you kind of have to be a multi-instrumentalist, so to speak. You have to be able to do all these things, especially in the modern world, I think, as a filmmaker. We could talk about, you know, social media and things like that. And in a way, people are making their own little short form films every day, aren't they, for 60 seconds or what have you. And you kind of have to be able to sort of branch out and do things for yourself now. you know, if you want to make a film, you kind of have to know how to edit it, have to know how to write it, and all these things, you know. So I find that really inspiring, actually. That's kind of how you've come to it, and you didn't get sort of that defining moment, because I certainly didn't. You know, people ask me, oh, well, why did you decide to do that? It's like, honestly, like you, I just hopefully want to make some kind of film someday that's a little like Girls, Girls, Girls. That's sort of, it's got a message in there. It'll get people like me to watch it and go, oh, okay, no, life does make sense, you know, and to stop worrying about things so much. And I've suggested this film to everyone, honestly, men, women, all genders, honestly. And I just think you've just done such a good job just representing us. And hearing, you know, you talk now, all too often, it's like never meet your hero, so to speak, you know. It's you kind of meet the people who made a great song and they're just terrible. But you, I think you really have sort of, I can see you and the film sort of going hand in hand. I can see you in the film.
Thank you.
So, no, honestly, I mean.
That means a lot. That was really lovely. Thank you.
And
by the way, it's a really great idea for a filmmaker to have another skill, like musician is perfect, you know, or like journalist is not bad, or a brain surgeon, you know, like it's definitely all a plus. You definitely don't have to choose between musician and filmmaker.
All right. Yeah, that's honestly, see, that's exactly the inspiration us youngsters need, let me tell you. All right, then. I'm going to sort of speed up a little bit to sort of the final process of the film, or one of the final processes. And I'm really interested to know, did you what was it like seeing the first rough cut, for example, the first kind of almost complete edit, the first time you really saw the film kind of compiled? What was it like? What were you thinking? Any regret? Were you proud? What was going through your mind?
Great question, because usually it's terrible. Usually it's the worst moment in the entire production, because of course, all you can see and remember also from set are the things that you messed up or didn't get or didn't think about, can only think about now. You know, it's kind of like this self-loathing moment of, like, how can I even call myself a filmmaker? And then you're trying to sort of, I don't know, talk yourself out of that misery. But with this film, I was collaborating for the first time with editor Samu Heikkilä, who is an amazing editor. He's actually Finland's most award, like the Finnish Film Awards. He's won the most of them and been nominated something like 16 times, which tells you, I mean, I don't think that awards are the be all and end all of things, but that tells you something about his talent. And he had done the first edit with very little guidance from me. I had only given him all of the sort of artistic main words that I was talking about earlier, and kind of like the main mottos and sort of like the take that we had created for the film, and sort of tried to explain to him how, like, what we were thinking when we shot it, so that he would be on the same page with that. But I had not told him any specific direction at all. He was very free to work on it, on the footage by himself. And he worked on it for 3 weeks and then showed me the first cut. And it was a strange experience, really, really strange, because it worked. And I wasn't self-loathing, and I was kind of like, how come this is so good? You know, this is the first draft of the film, and it's really good. Like, I almost felt embarrassed, like, am I not getting something? Am I not like seeing some terrible mistake that everybody else can see on screen? Why am I enjoying this? Like, this is really working. And yeah, and so it was a very easy editing process, because we weren't struggling against the big problem that had to be fixed. Of course, very much thanks to not only Samu's genius, but also the great performances. You know, we didn't have to cut around, you know, and a performance that had to be quote unquote rescued, which you also sometimes do. And also because the script, with its structure of 3 Fridays, was in a good way inflexible in editing, you know, like it had to stay in that linear structure that it was, otherwise it couldn't work. So we weren't struggling with structure either, which you often are. So it was strangely easy and positive.
Too good to be true, almost. Kind of expecting, oh, hang on, something's going to go wrong. And hey, I mean, I guess it didn't. I mean, you know, you got some serious accomplishments with this film. That's just mind-blowing. And again, well done. But you talk about sort of that moment where you might see the rough cut for the first time when you're filmmaking, and it's not great, and that loathing. It actually reminded me to an experience I had less than a month ago. I was very, very lucky to go to Sweden, to Falkenberg, to take part in this youth media summit. And we were all tasked with making, you know, these short films within a couple of days. And I remember having that moment, you know, watching the rough cut, and I was like, oh my God, this is not what I envisioned. You know what I mean? Like, this is not what I wanted. And I just remember stepping out of the edit room. There was all these edit rooms sort of back to back, really hot, you know, summer's day. And I thought, oh, you know what? I'll just go into this back room where there's no windows and it's really cold, and I'll just cool down because I was getting really stressed out. You know, it's not what I wanted. And then one of the people who were running the film organization, she came in, she could see I was sort of pacing like something out of a cartoon, you know, like I'd done something. She was like, oh, what's up? And she gave some good advice. She just said, don't doubt yourself. Do you know what I mean? Because and when she said that, I was like, oh God, where's that advice been? You know, that's sort of the minute people start questioning what you're doing, you might doubt yourself because you feel like you can't uphold your, you know, but really what you need to say is, just step aside, I'll make it work, you know, and have in trust. And I suppose I kind of wanted to ask you, kind of as advice maybe you could give to young people along those lines. What, you know, how can we, maybe something about self-doubt or that kind of, when we're in a rut, so to speak, what would you say to young filmmakers or aspiring filmmakers to change about what they're doing?
Definitely. I mean, it's a very familiar situation to me. I've been in it a million times. So first of all, you should know that it is a familiar situation. You know, there is always going to be that moment where things didn't look or feel the way you intended or wanted. That doesn't mean that you can't get them to go toward your vision when you're working on them, because that was just the first trial, and there has never ever in the entire world been a piece of work where the first version of, be it script, cut, or anything, a song, anything, has been perfect. So it's always a process. It's a normal process to be struggling with the footage and the material you have, be it written material or shot material. And one thing that I think is really important, and I think this is what the person talking to you meant also, is that we filmmakers tend to, and I guess maybe artists in general, tend to tie our entire self or identity to that piece of work that we're doing. You know, like if this work that I'm doing now I think sucks, then that must mean I suck, right? Mm-hmm. You know, whereas that's not actually true. You have to be able to separate the two. Sometimes you're going to create a piece of work that wasn't so great, you know, like there isn't a genius in the world who has only created perfect pieces of work. And oftentimes you are also making it something that's different than what you intended, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's worse. You know, it could be different. You can make it into a process of discovery. You can certainly discover something that's better, even that maybe it was a happy, very happy coincidence, or maybe happy accident that you quote unquote messed something up on the shoot and then were able to like do something that was very different and very good. But I think the key thing is to separate yourself and the work. You know, you're working on a piece, and that's a process. It's a creative process. It might be an easy process, or it might be a terribly difficult process, but it's a process that you're working on and you're figuring it out. It doesn't mean that it defined you. You know, it doesn't mean that you are now exactly the same as this piece. You know, like there's too many things, there's too many beliefs in the film industry, like, oh, you're only as good as your previous work or something like that. You know, that's too tough. I don't buy into that stuff at all. You know, I'm 44. I've made work that I found interesting, but Girls, Girls, Girls is the first one that you can call, you know, like a success, I guess, you know, because it has luckily found a large audience and been very well reviewed and everything. But it doesn't mean that I just did terrible work before that, or, you know, it's like I've made peace with that. So you have to be inspired by the work itself, and the process, rather than other things like the success or praise you would get for the work or something. I think that's very important. Well, this became like a really big stream of consciousness, but but I hope you could make some sense of it. You know, it's just have mercy on yourself, respect the work, and don't think the work is you. You know, your process is different. Everybody peaks at a different time. Nobody has to be like a Cannes winner at 20, you know, like that's like a common problem also, that we think that we have to like win big with our first short film or something. I guess that's why I was mentioning my age and everything, that I never went through that route. You know, it's not like I've been, you know, I don't have any short films that won big or anything like that, but I've kept working. I'm excited about the work, and I do things that I find important and interesting. And that's, I think, all you can really do. Just concentrate on the work and try to make it you, and not like your identity is that, but it represents your handwriting and it represents your worldview, and you believe in your work.
All right, I think that's almost a good place to end, but I do have one more question for you. And it's great that I think, you know, like you say, you've really carried your passion through, and I think maybe it's your passion is one of those things that maybe have gotten you to the point that you're at now, you know, that kind of wants to make films and proceed. And I'm really interested actually that when you said that you hadn't had an award-winning short film or anything, because you often associate that with a director, you know, oh, they must have had a short in Tribeca Film Festival or something that they won, you know. So I suppose my last question for you would be, what's next for you and the film? And maybe, you know, you're going to travel places with, you know, different film festivals, things like that. Where's the film going? Where are you going?
The film has been traveling at a nice amount of film festivals since Sundance. So I've been traveling with it a little bit. I went to London and Berlin and Prague and New York and all these wonderful places with it. And the best thing about that is the conversation with the audience. It's so beautiful to be able to actually have that interaction after the film. So that's been a real pleasure. And now it will also open theatrically or on video on demand or streaming in a lot of countries from now on. I don't know how much traveling I'll be doing with the launches. We'll see about that, but I'm certainly very curious about how people will interact with it globally. You know, so far it's been the same reaction, be it Taiwan or New York or anywhere we've been, Bologna. So that's, yeah, it's very exciting to see that.
Awesome. And what's next for you? You're going to be directing another film, writing anything? What are you doing?
Yes, I'm in the middle of developing, we're in the script stages. A wonderful writer, Katja Kallio, is working on a script that I'm directing. And we have development funds for that. We don't have full financing yet, but the producer is very confident that we'll get it. And tomorrow I'm breaking the script down because we have a 2-day boot camp of the script coming up, and I'm very excited about that. It's another female-led story. This time it takes place 120 years in the past, but very similar themes are being dealt with in this film. So I'm sort of staying with the theme, but changing the world around it.
Oh, Alli Haapasalo, thank you so much for joining me and talking with me. You've truly inspired me, and I'm sure everybody watching this and so many young people, I'll take this conversation we've had to Ffilm Ifanc and our young sort of filmmakers group, and hopefully that'll boost our encouragement to do more films, make more films, and hopefully be like you. So thank you so much. It means the world to me. Alli Haapasalo, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was my pleasure, and good luck with your projects. And to also everyone who watched and listened, good luck with your filmmaking, and just keep at it.
All right. Well, from us too. Bye, everyone.